if they understand the tools, they understand how to maximize them. Instead of thinking about it from, hey, we had to close off this insane canyon area to get this incredible shot, it's, hey, we can be in that canyon any spot, any day, any time we want to for every future campaign. And that could be something that's a recurring thing if we decide to. As the space grows, you'll get a lot of people who are using it pretty good. Our goal, especially at Synapse, is to make sure people are using it brilliantly.
Hello, you're watching and listening to the voice of Virtual Production, an exclusive series by Synapse and Little Black Book. Across the episodes of this video interview series, we'll hear from industry-leading experts about how the world of production's transforming and discover how to get the most out of cutting-edge virtual production tech. My name's Adam Bennett, and I'm a writer at Little Black Book. Today I'm joined by two perfect guests to discuss virtual production through a commercial lens. Aaron Gordon is a co-founder and the Chief Operations Officer at Synapse. He's a serial entrepreneur, a cinematographer, a producer, a drummer, and a lover of creating amazing work. Aaron, it's great to have you here. How are you doing?
Great to be here, brother.
And where are you today, Aaron?
I'm just in the airport, hanging out at the lounge.
Incredible. How quiet you guys can make that.
It really is, yeah.
And alongside Aaron, we have the pleasure of being joined by Matt Scoville, Chief Integration Officer at Omnicom Production. I'm told that the only continent never to have seen Matt's work is Antarctica, and that is surely just a matter of time. Matt, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Adam. Happy to be here.
Matt, I would love to start with a question for you, which is, how important are virtual production technologies, and I'm talking about LED volumes and pre-visualization to everything else, how important is that within Omnicom's production ecosystem?
Adam, we see virtual production technologies answering a whole host of unique and universal challenges across various categories and segments for our clients and our agencies. We've used virtual production technologies to give creative and brand marketing teams consistent pre-visualization experiences across diverse and highly configurable automotive product lines, as one example, or with robust 3D character workflows, again, saving time and money at various points in the process while delivering craft and consistency that our brand marketers and agencies expect.
Aaron, listening to that, how does that chime with what you're seeing and the work you're doing?
I mean, it checks out perfectly. I think, especially in the commercial world, and I know Matt can talk to this, overseeing a lot of different agencies' work, the efficiency you see not just across a pipeline for production itself, but the efficiencies you see across a lot of converging technologies and many applications in commercial. You're talking about out of home, you're talking about fully digital animated pipelines, you're talking about interactive pipelines, you're talking about production pipelines. I mean, you're really seeing a convergence point across multitudes of pipelines for your entire integrated campaign.
Matt, one of the kind of complaints or observations that I hear often when I'm talking to marketing or advertising folk is this issue of volume. The demands for volume are going up and up and up and up. Budget's not necessarily in tandem with that. To what extent is virtual production part of the solution to that challenge?
Virtual production is in many ways the solution to that problem. As you mentioned, Adam, the current brand marketer and by extension, creative agencies and commercial producers are faced with delivering communication across a diverse audience, across a diverse set of platforms and channels. And to your point, they have the same, and that's best case scenario, budget to deliver more bespoke communication, if not less money than they've had in years past. Virtual production technologies are now allowing for the creation of these highly varied pieces of content in ways we've never seen before, allowing marketers and agencies to deliver precise messaging across that consumer and platform diversity in a lot of different ways. Adam, you and I had discussed before this notion of it's not all huge volumes and Martian terrains either that come to the table to help solve these problems. Sometimes a large TV screen, a camera, a computer, and a little bit of curiosity can take a brand's beverage line from the interior of a Brooklyn bar to the patio of a beachside in Florida. Again, this notion of delivering highly varied personalized assets tailored to those specific groups of people or those specific consumer groups in a way that only the virtual production technologies are allowing to be possible efficiently and effectively.
So if you have like a campaign that's going globally, is virtual production kind of helping you take that and sort of iterate on it for local audiences?
Absolutely. I think this is where we see the increasing fidelity and craftsmanship of the technology coming together to solve that problem in a really interesting way in real time. I know Aaron, Synapse, had worked on a project with Genesis, and you see this notion of sort of real life slice of life and using virtual production technology to deliver creative transitions in that real world slice of life environment. I think, Adam, to your question on global campaigns, if we think in the same way that Aaron and the team did for that Genesis project and think about the diversity of global living rooms, global environments, right? Delivering a relevant message to a consumer in South Africa or a consumer in Shanghai, and using that virtual production technology to allow for potentially more traditional casting variations in the location you set up production, but utilizing similar technologies in the Genesis example, representing without leaving the same four walls, a living room in Bangladesh or a living room in Los Angeles, and allowing to do that and deliver that level of global variation in new, exciting, and hyper efficient ways really have the potential to change the way we look at global advertising across the board.
And Matt, I can't agree more with what you just said. And I think we've seen over the past few decades a couple cycles in advertising. You saw the cycle where people really were trying to kind of get out of this, make it ambiguous bubble, and let's go hyper focused on each individual target. Then when budgets had to decrease, the answer to that, of course, was what's the one thing we can create that hits the most amount of audience to maximize our budget. And I think to Matt's point, what VP is allowing advertising to do is get the best of both worlds. It's, hey, we've decreased the budget. We have the answer to the problem that we had before, which is that we have to do more with less. But now we can go back to that cycle where we hyper target, hyper stylize, and be hyper relevant to each individual audience. It doesn't necessarily solve our casting problem that we'll still need to figure out, but it changes a lot. You can put a lot more money into diverse casting when you're allowed to be in a controlled studio, and you really can keep those environments and those assets going. And I think the other thing to add to that as well is when we're talking about campaigns and not just one-off spots, to Matt's point, if it's a beverage company or if it's an auto company, right? Once you create the asset, you have that asset, you own that asset. And so the idea of coming, if people write for these technologies, then they can vary what they want to vary, but they can also come back to what they want to come back to. Instead of thinking about it from, hey, we had to close off this insane canyon area to get this incredible shot. It's, hey, we can be in that canyon any spot, any day, any time we want to for every future campaign. And that could be something that's a recurring thing if we decide to. And I think, when people are weighing the balance of how to maximize our budget and how to get the highest quality, if they understand the tools, they understand how to maximize them.
Aaron, you hit the nail on the head with that notion of decreasing budgets and having to meet the needs of modern media plans, right? Where we see utilization and application of virtual production technologies is usually after a consistent call for help from our clients that says, I have a 3D rich content ecosystem. I love the way my work looks, right? I believe in my partners who are crafting those characters, crafting those vehicles, but I make the big TV spot and now I'm out of money. And I have a modern marketing mix and media plan that I have to deliver against. And what we're finding is virtual production technology, to your point, allows for both beautiful crafted origination, storytelling, and brand building, with the ability using those assets and smart production technology to deliver the variation required for those diverse audiences and platforms in a way, again, they just couldn't afford to do before. So now we see brands and clients who would show up in the social space with their little 3D character in the same pose with a smile on a hand, right? Static, and some sort of message. Now able to move, now able to speak, now able to engage with consumers utilizing virtual production technology.
Something that's really interesting here, one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Aaron, because listening to Matt there, it really paints a picture of like Omnicom truly like engaging with and having understood the potential of what's on offer with virtual production. Is this something you're finding generally, that the industry's levels of education are higher than they were? Or to what extent are you still kind of explaining what's possible to your clients as you work?
Yes, I think there's a twofold answer to that question. I think on the one hand, yes. Every day, I think more and more people are doing a workshop or understanding what it can be. And I think they understand the promise and the theory of it. Um, I think on the other side of that, we're still in this phase, as we are always going to be in this phase when new tools come along and new technologies come along, where people understand some of the cool things it can do, but they're not always grasping the why. And I think, to what Matt and I are talking about right now, where we're kind of thinking the core why of it all. I think there are some producers that are coming in that understand the cool things they can do with it. They haven't necessarily gotten to the point where they go, oh, and that if I write it this way, or if I change the logistics this way, that changes my entire budget for these three scenes. You get directors who come in and they say, I've seen people using this. I'd love to use it for A, B, and C. And you go, well, actually, B and C aren't a great use of the tool, but A is, and just doing it, in scene A is going to save all these other, aspects of your production. All that to say, I think while the space, I think, if you look at classic tech adoption cycle, we're finally past the early adoption and the hype cycle. We are getting to the point of mass adoption. But I still think there's going to be constant education in the space. I think the other thing to point out too is that if you think of it like a tool, and you think of it as a tool set, I should say, any tool set is only as good as its operators. And so while people are still getting educated in the space, I think there's always room for better education. And I think that as the space grows, you'll get a lot of people who are using it pretty good. Our goal, especially at Synapse, is to make sure people are using it brilliantly. And I think that's one thing that we want to push more of.
On that point, Matt, how do you kind of see Omnicom's use and engagement with virtual production evolving, let's say, over the next year or so?
I think we will definitely see an increase in the use of these technologies. We're already seeing larger adoptions of the tools and smarter applications, to Aaron's point. I think so long as we keep finding ways to solve modern production problems with virtual production, we will continue to see a growing role in delivering for our clients. I think, Aaron, you hit the nail on the head. It's too reactive today. It's not proactive in thinking about the tools and technologies and the impact on creative problem solving and working that understanding earlier up in the process to maximize the potential. And to your point, the smart use cases, because that's the other thing. It's not a trick, right? It's not just cool to do. It's also not an either or. And if you think about it in the context of you only do virtual production or you don't, and it's only about the moment of creation, you're shortchanging the potential that virtual production can bring to you and your partners and your clients in a significant way. And I think, to your point, we're seeing more of that understanding develop, and we on the creative agency side are starting to hear, which I love, a heightened level of curiosity from our clients, asking how virtual production can help come to the table to solve their problems, which again isn't the ideal way to come at smart utilization of the technology, but I do appreciate the curiosity and interest in starting the conversation. So when we do bring those tools and technologies to the table to solve problems, we're already one step ahead in the expectation and understanding that there is a new way to think about content creation and delivery. And this is one of those tools in the tool belt to be able to accomplish and achieve that.
That's really interesting. So, Matt, so clients are saying to you, sort of, we think virtual production might be a way to tackle this problem, like unprompted. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, and it's been a slow burn, I think, for marketers here in the States and really understanding what the potential can be. I think more talk in trades, more conversation with like-minded marketers where they're starting to see virtual production technologies. And we also know, again, to the notion of brands and brand marketers having the same, if not less money to be able to deliver brilliant communication, this is one of those obvious tools. And the more you hear from your creative partners, your like-minded brand leads in the application, even in a small way, of how it helped to solve that problem, it starts to garner that curiosity. And that curiosity is what builds a broader conversation and greater levels of participation outside of the confines of the creative agency into that world. Aaron mentioned we're starting to see a greater level of sophistication and understanding. I still think that is predominantly limited to the creative and production community. But again, we're seeing elements of it getting into the brand marketer space, which is where things get really exciting. Because again, you've already got that context to bring the tools to the table without feeling like, you're bringing snake oil or lights and magic to a conversation. You're bringing real creative problem solving tools to deliver against what they need to deliver for their brands.
Totally. And to add to Matt, to what you're saying, I think it's really important to point out that when you're dealing with a central technological convergence like virtual production, when you're dealing with a filmmaking but a game engine running it, I think the part that people are starting to really wrap their heads around, especially larger brands, right? More than ever, brand plays are gaming plays. A brand is either sponsoring or getting involved in game IP. If you think about billboards today, are all turning into LED screens that are digital, that are run by computers, right? That we would call them a node, right? And when you look at the bigger picture of it, you go, this really sits at the center. It really sits at the center of all of it. And when you have a central piece of technology running all of that, then if you think about it from the integrated campaign level, when you think about it, step one before you say tactic wise, let's do A, B, C, D, and E, then you realize that actually over 5 categories, you might be able to have some centralized assets. And I think that's the part that I know Matt's team is wrapping their heads around in a really, really innovative way. And I think that's education-wise where other people are going to start to catch up. I think, when you get the client saying at the singular tactile level, hey, this would be really cool to do with the VP, that's awesome. And we work with those clients all the time. And especially when they want to shoot in the studio, we're dealing with a tactic, right? But when you get an agency thinking about the 5 different ways this could be helpful to the whole pipeline, then you start to create an ecosystem in a world where there's a much more cohesive plan and a much more an immense amount of cost efficiency, pipeline efficiency, time efficiency. It's only up from there.
Aaron, it's like you've got your eyes inside of our automotive pipeline and workflow, because that's exactly how we're approaching it. This notion that, we see Tesla and Mercedes showing up as selectable vehicles in gaming franchises, right? And the ability to create an asset pipeline that originates from one single source of truth with consideration into where this thing can show up in front of consumers, and bringing that thinking upstream creates a whole host of efficiencies for, again, our brands and marketers and agencies to show up in the right way, in the right place, without reinventing the wheel and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in re-origination of the same thing to drive communication in the right place for the right audience. You mentioned something about game engine tooling too, which is one of the, I don't want to say points of contention, but one of the topics of debate inside of the creative agency field. We need to approach these technologies for our agencies and our clients in the most open source way possible, because just as we see in AI with AI technologies, not all are created equal, and some are better than others. So being able to deliver a client an efficient and effective pipeline and pipeline experience in the context of, to all of our points, changing technology, different players, new, right, cutting edge technologies coming in, to be able to adopt those in the context of the brand new pipelines we're creating is part of the evolving challenge in where do I build, where do I provide that flexibility, what's the right tool for the job, to see as much into that future as you possibly can to make the right decisions in real time, but not find yourself in a situation where you have to completely reinvent the apple cart because one piece of technology succeeds another piece of technology in that tool set and becomes the way to deliver that specific experience.
That's so interesting to listen to, because I feel like in touching upon gaming applications, we're touching upon a topic for a whole other episode of the Voice of Virtual Production. It's one that I would love to dig into, but I'm really conscious that we're running up against time for the episode we have today. So all that is left for me to do is give a huge thank you to our guests, Aaron and Matt. Thank you so much for giving up your time. And to all of you guys watching, thank you so much for doing so. And we'll be back with another episode of the Voice of Virtual Production shortly.